You're listening to The Honeydew with Ryan Sickler.
Welcome back to The Honeydew, y'all. It's another Wednesday. We doing it over here at your mom's house. I'm Ryan Sickler. All social media, Ryan Sickler. My website's ryansickler.com. Get that album out there, y'all. Get a hold of yourself. Available everywhere you get good music. Get it. April 4th through April 6th, Phoenix. Coming out to the House of Comedy. Very excited to get out there and do some shows. April 26th and 27th, I'll be at the Vegas Festival. And as I've told you, June shows in Richmond, Maryland, and Atlantic City with Tommy Buns. And then August 1st through the 3rd, House of Comedy in Minnesota. I'm not sure if those tickets are on sale yet. Again, every week, out there doing it. You're doers. You just are. Out there doing it. I appreciate it. I see your stories. I see you guys commenting. You're funny as fuck. Always. You always have been. You're really good. And I appreciate the support. The honeydewpodcast.com is the website, and it's where you can get all the information I'm about to tell you. You're like, where the hell I can get it? Honeydewpodcast.com. Email me at honeydewpodcast@gmail.com. Social media, we got Facebook over there, the Honeydew Podcast. Twitter at honeydewpod. There's a group page on Facebook already with quite a bit of followers for only a few weeks in. I'm very impressed and appreciative of that. But get over there and also subscribe to the official page that I set up. You know, I the people I pay to do that shit. And thank you guys for listening. Got another great guest for you this week here. I said, do you know what the show's about? And he said, I'm not right for all the shows, but unfortunately, I'm right for this show. So I'll introduce him on that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Honeydew, Jamie Kilstein.
Hi, buddy.
How you doing, bud?
I'm legitimately so excited to do this show. I love it, one, and two, when I read what it was about, just like fuck ups and like mistakes.
That actually was my first name.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My
I wasn't sure how marketable.
No,
it was.
so I named my podcast "Fuck Up Pod" with Jamie Kilstein and my agent, and like I have the art and everything. If you go to iTunes, it's still that art because it won't switch it out. And he was like, "Yeah, can you not do that?
It won't trade it out."
No. I don't know why. It traded out on everything else, but now it's the Jamie Kilstein podcast. But yeah, I did the same thing, and so I was like, I usually don't write people to do their podcast. Like we were talking about this off air. Like I'll never like text Joe and be like, hey bud, because I'm scared too. And but I saw yours and what it was about, and I was just like, man, I have never been more qualified for a podcast in my fucking life.
Yeah, when I said to you, do you know what my show's about? I think you said something like, unfortunately, I'm not perfect for a lot of podcasts, but I'm right for this one.
I was just telling you, I wrote down a list of terrible things that have happened in my life, and it looks like a comedy set list.
I love preparation.
So yeah.
I got to believe you probably weren't prepared for any of these events on this goddamn page.
No, not at all. Oh, and by the way, we were just laughing as I'm just like listing my like litany of issues where I'm like, oh, and I might have an eating disorder and the divorce. I forgot I also like dropped out of high school, like everything.
Oh, we're gonna cover it.
All right.
But before we get into it, please promote anything you want.
Yeah. So I have a podcast. It's called the Jamie Kilstein Podcast. I like it a lot. We talk about depression and stuff like that, and I've had people from like UFC fighters to like Moby to comics, you know. And then my Twitter is at Jamie Kilstein. Where I'm trying desperately not to like stir shit anymore. And then my Instagram, which is my happy place, which is like just like cats and fighting, is the Jamie Kilstein. And then if you have a fucking comedy show, book me. I'm gonna be recording a new album in LA at some point. So I'll announce, but some point really soon. So if you follow me on socials, then I'll announce it there.
Great. So I wanted to
What if I left right after that?
Was it?
I'm done.
That would be a honeydew episode, bro. So I asked you're originally from Jersey.
Yes.
Right? Let's just start there.
Yeah. So I grew up in Jersey, which kind of meant like the whole chip on your shoulder, about New York.
Where in Jersey?
So I was actually central Jersey, like in between Princeton and Trenton, so like literally middle class. And I grew up very poor. It is, right? Like it's directly in the middle. And Princeton.
Yeah. Trenton makes the world takes?
Oh, yeah, but like one of the letters has been out on that sign for so long, and it's such a depressing metaphor. Like
somebody took the electricity.
I don't remember what letter.
Somebody took the E. The E, somebody took it.
We need to make another E. Yeah, it was terrible. And so I grew up like kind of more like white trash poor, where our town was kind of getting gentrified around us. So it was when all of these like developments with the kind of houses that looked all the same were coming up. And like now I go back and I'm like, oh, this is like a fairly wealthy town. It was called Pennington, New Jersey. It was like a fairly wealthy town. But I grew up like right around class war time, where like me and the other public school kids were getting stoned and like vandalizing the private school, which was like, the fancy, right. Where all the fancy kids went. And so grew up in Jersey. I'm one of 5 kids. I'm like, do they say that the oldest is supposed to be the responsible one, but like I'm the fuck up.
And you're the oldest?
Yeah, like in order, it went, I dropped out of high school, then my sister dropped out of high school, but got her GED, then her master's. Then
that's a hell of a jump.
Yeah, dude. Then my next brother got into a good college, like D1 wrestler. Man. Then the next brother got into an Ivy League, but he dropped out, but now he's in like fucking Yale Law. He's great. And then the youngest one got into fucking Harvard. And so it literally
you are the honeydew.
Yeah, dude. And like, just it went in order. Like my parents like kept like kind of correcting,
or has at least
it went at least that
been
way.
In Ivy League.
Yeah. And now both my brothers are at like Yale Law. It's insane. And so I dropped out of high school. And
how does that happen? How do you get
the dropout?
Yeah, I mean, do you just start fucking up in 9th grade? Are you really smart and you're not good at school? Like, how do you go from being a fuck up?
Oh, that just reminded me of another fucking tragic story. Okay, so that's a great question, by the way. So
thank you.
What? So I was always like mediocre in school. I was the things I loved, I was great at. So got into, auditioned and got into jazz band playing drums, but I didn't know how to read music. I just got a hold of like the song that we were going to audition with, pretended to read the music, because I loved music. So I could sit there and play guitar or play drums for hours. When I started stand up, I would take the train in every fucking day to New York to do like an open mic, then like come back to Jersey. I squatted illegally in a dorm while handing out flyers at the Boston Comedy Club. I lived out of my car for 2 years. Like when I love something, I go fucking nuts. It's like the addict brain. But I don't have, like my ex-wife she was one of those people who, she was like, yeah, in college, like I could just like get drunk and like write a paper. And I'm like, I just couldn't do that. Like all of my learning disabilities, which there are many, kick in when it's something I don't give a shit about. Like I can't, but if I'm interested, for some reason, it just like all goes away and I can just hyper focus on it. So I was mediocre probably until like sophomore year when things get like hard. And when it's like real shit, and I failed Spanish 1 every year. I failed gym class.
How do you do that?
I'll tell you how. You get stoned and pretend you don't have your shorts, and then you just walk outside.
And what, you just sit on a bench?
Yeah, I would just sit on the bench, super high, and I'd listen to my Walkman, and I was like, "This is infinitely better than whatever fucking dumb variation of dodgeball they're playing." So I did that.
Yeah, there's so many variations.
So, yeah. Oh, my God.
This is great. Where's the headline? What if I get hit in the head? That was always my favorite. Like the kid that got the most damage and the concussion, he gets to stay in for another fucking hit. We used to hit people in the head.
Yeah.
No, you can stay in, bro. Hit you in the head.
It's so violent.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, we would play dodgeball on like little scooters. Like I feel like the teachers just ran out of sports. And so they just came up with just different versions of dodgeball. And like, so anyway,
go putt-putt with golf carts today, guy. Oh, all right. That's interesting.
And so I was failing everything, and then I actually,
but for lack of effort, it sounds like not really because you're dumb.
No, so your read was, well, I'm dumb dumb in a way where I'm dumb where I can't like put together shit. I can't read instruction, but I like read like 3 books a month, but they're books if they were assigned to me, I would not be able.
I got it.
You know.
Yes.
But you were right. So I had
You're not a fan of curriculum.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Hence comedy. But what you said was really interesting, and it reminded me of something tragic. Where I had an English teacher, and he was the cool teacher, and I have fucking dad issues and was just like desperate for a male role model. So it would always like, I think I made him, I made him like make me like a mixtape. It is shocking I haven't been molested. It is shocking I have not been molested.
You asked the male English teacher to make you a mixtape.
100%. I can count. There are at least 5 times coming to me right now that I should have been molested. Like, I talked to a guy.
Never in my life.
Dude, I talked to a guy for 2 months on AOL Instant Messenger who was pretending to be Mick Foley, my favorite wrestler.
Yeah.
And he was going to train me to be like a hardcore wrestler. And I was like, this adds up.
Oh my God. You got catfished on that?
Dude, yes. I met Mick Foley.
Hold on. We're going to come back to Mick Foley 1 second because I have to ask you. How did he make you one? Like, what did he do? Or did he just send you to fucking fuck out?
No, he made me a cassette because he played guitar, dude. And like,
wait, originals? A mixtape of originals?
No. Then I would be crazy. Yeah, then I would have deserved to be molested. No. He was like a guitar player, and I was a guitar player, so it was the first time I heard Stevie Ray. He got me into Stevie Ray Vaughan. He got me into like really good music.
All right.
By the way, I realize now where the story is going. This is not good at all. Okay, so then, so he made long-haired dude. He would just be the
more of an influence reel.
Yeah,
than a mixtape.
And he would be the. Thank you. That's a much better way to put
it. Who do you think would be some
an influence reel? I hope there's not a fucking molester out listening to the show. Be like, that's what I'm going to call it.
That's what I'm going to
call it. And so he made me, he was just a fucking cool guy that was like, we're reading outside today. And everyone was like, oh, we love you. And I would start telling him about, like when my mom would relapse, I would like talk to him about it. He was just like a guy I could go to because I didn't have a good relationship with my dad at the time. And so
your mom would relapse from
booze.
Okay.
Well then it was booze. And so there was one day, I remember this so specifically, and this ties into the dropout thing. We were reading Joy Luck Club, which was one of the books. I was like, I try every time I tried, and was just like, I can't. And that's the thing, dude. If I was growing up now, I would be on so much medication. But back then, I feel like I just missed the cutoff of when they started like and look, a lot of people need medication, right? But like we do subscribe, whatever.
All the scribes.
Yeah, all the scribes.
Go with the
and overprescribing, Jesus Christ. And so, you know, like nowadays, like they would have just given me like a bunch of pills, and I'd just be like, no, just give me a book that's not the Joy Luck Club. Like, just that's all I need, you know? Like,
how about 5 choices?
Yeah, yes. Oh, that's like super solid idea. And I'm sure at some schools they do that and do stuff like that. But anyway, I remember he asked some question about the book, and I answered the question, and I was right. The problem was he was like, did you read the book? And I was like, or did you read the chapter? And I was like, no. And he was essentially figured out that I could get the
Charles was predictable.
Yeah.
Saw the end of these Canterbury Tales coming a mile away.
Away. Time to go play Chaucer dodgeball. It's the theme of the day. But I could hear the conversation they were having about the characters, and whether it was as a writer, I could be like, this is what I would have done, or probably more just like I have good intuition with people. I'd be like, that's probably where this is going. So he knew I was answering the question correctly, but I was also bullshitting and didn't read it, right? And so that day he took me aside in like this little room, and told me something that like should have gotten him fired, but arguably saved my life, where he was like, It was out of a fucking movie where he literally goes, "You're one of the smartest kids I have. Just so you know, sorry, you're one of the smartest kids I have. You have a 12 in my class." And this isn't like a 12 out of 15. I didn't go to some weird
out of
private
100.
Oh yeah, 12 out of 100.
You ain't even a tease,
Dude,
man.
by the way, the disappointment in your voice when you said 100 it just reminded me. I'm like, oh, my dad issues are still there. I was like, oh no, I disappointed him. Yeah,
That was more a shock. Bro,
Okay,
to be
great.
honest with you.
yeah, 12 out of 100.
What the fuck did you do?
Nothing. I guess
You just signed handed one paper in,
yeah,
bro.
Yeah, answered that one question about the Joy Luck Club. I let him make me a mixtape, and he felt so bad. He's like, I guess 12. And so he literally said to me, this is such a fucking movie moment. He goes, "School, just so you know, school's not for everybody." And then he gave me his fucking copy of Jack Kerouac's On the Road.
Whoa.
And was just kind of like, that's all I'm saying. And that was really huge for me because I assumed that high school dropouts were literally just criminals. You know, we didn't have Google then.
Dumb people.
Yeah, we couldn't just like look up like all the famous actors and, you know, comedians and people who dropped out of high school. I literally just thought, yeah, it was just garbage people. And so once I heard that, I was like, oh, interesting. And that kind of did it for me because I knew that I either wanted to be in a band or do stand up. And the way I tried to like sell it to my parents were like, I'm a mess right now. I'm just getting like hammered every day. And
You're drinking too?
Yeah.
And you're still what, 16, 17 at this
No,
point?
actually I was smoking more pot then. I was like a bit of a jam band kid. And I didn't start drinking probably till around 17, 18 because I didn't start drinking till I did stand up. Because when you're doing stand up and they're like, well, we're not going to give you any money, but you can get a free beer. You're like, all right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want to earn something. And so that's when I started drinking. But I told them, I was like, you're going to go into so much debt for me to, I can't focus on this. And
tutors and all, if you're going to put all
everything.
that money.
I mean, they didn't have money for tutors, but I was like, let's just fucking say I get into college by a miracle. It's going to go to waste. Now, my dad was always like, well, what if you went to like music school? And I was never, again, I couldn't read music. I was like, it's going to ruin it. It's going to ruin the thing I love. And I'm not going to be good at it. You know, and every time I've tried to take lessons or learn music theory, I'm like, I'm just not good at it. And so, you know, I was like, I will treat, and I did, stand up like a job. I will treat that. I will go in every day. I will do these open mics. I'm going to write. I'm going to research. I'm going to, you know. And they said no. They were like, absolutely not, you know, whatever. So then I get fucking mono. This is my junior year. So I get mono, and I'm out for like months.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And people are just bringing me homework, and I'm just throwing it directly in the trash. I'm like,
I got mono.
Yeah, I couldn't do the work when there was an adult teacher trained how to teach me. I'm not going to fucking do it in my room, like when I'm like listening to Fish and like, are you out of your fucking mind?
God.
So I was just like, and I think probably subconsciously, I'm like, I'm just going to get in too deep. And that's what I did. And I never went back. But then actually, there was this like brief trickery that happened where my mom was like, you have to, over the summer, she was like, you have to go in to sign official papers to drop out. And because I was an idiot high school dropout, I was just like, that sounds right. And I went. There aren't papers you have to fucking sign at all. It was a fucking trick. It was an intervention where it was her.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, it was her guidance counselor, I think my dad, and the principal. And I remember feeling so betrayed, and I was so scared.
By your
too.
mom,
yeah,
or
yeah,
by
yeah,
everyone?
I mean, kind of by everyone.
School?
It was the only time I was like frozen, where I literally,
It's hilarious. You weren't even good at dropping out.
no, yeah, I couldn't
You
even
just
drop
couldn't.
out correctly. I couldn't. You gotta show up here. Okay.
Oh yeah, let me come do that.
Yeah, you're back in school now. Fuck.
So they ambush you, and what do you do?
I just nod my head. I just nod my head and try
said
not to
no.
cry. That's it. No, I was just like, all right, sure.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and I'm
Oh.
just like in tears, like just like biting my lip, and they were like, "All right." So so over the summer, I probably watch like Good Will Hunting or some shit, and I motivate myself that I'm going to do it. And I bought binders because that shows you that you're serious. And I bought like Trapper Keepers and folders, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to fucking give it a go. If I have to go back, I'm just going to fucking do it. Like, just some wave of inspiration hit me. And I go back, and I just remember the math class I was sitting in, and I was just like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about.
I was always that way.
Dude,
math.
day one,
Nothing.
I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm with you on that.
But I was so disappointed because I was like, I was going to give it everything. And I'm like, I'm going to keep trying. Like, I always quit shit, and I'm not going to quit. And then, like, 3 days of this happened, 4 days of this happened. Then I see my guidance counselor from the ambush in the hallway.
Heard you up to a 15. Hey, man,
See? Dreams do come true. And I was like, I see her, and she goes, how's it going? And I was like, it's tough, but, like, I'm trying. And it's getting a little better every day. And she goes, just this year and next year, and you got it. And I was like, what? Because they didn't tell me that in the intervention. And
are you a senior at this point?
I thought I was.
I see.
But I was repeating my junior year, essentially. And then I would have to make up the credits, be a senior
And if
again.
she doesn't slip and say that, you don't fucking know that.
No. I mean, maybe, yeah. I mean, they definitely didn't tell me during the intervention. I was like, maybe I was so upset, but I'm like, they were just like, come back. And that makes sense, right? And so I go, cool. I'm going to go to the bathroom. And then I left.
That was it.
That was it. Well, I actually had, now that I think about it, there were 3 teachers who told me when I came back that year, they were like, I'm really glad you're back. If you need anything, come to me. So I was about to walk out, and I was like, I'm going to see these 3 teachers. One of them did not show up where he said he was going to.
Really?
Yep. We were going to meet. I had like hall monitor duty. He wasn't there. The second one, the gym teacher, I go, hey, man, I really need to talk to you. And he goes, I can't talk right now. And I go, but remember when you said you really, and he goes, is it drugs? And I go, what? And he goes, tell me, is that why you were gone? Is it drugs? And I was like, no, it's not drugs. He goes, all right, I gotta go. And then he just fucking,
nothing else matters.
Just like walked out. And then the third guy,
listen, I care if it's drugs.
Are you holding?
If it's not, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah. And so then the third one I see in the hallway, and he goes, where are you supposed to be? And I go, I really need to talk to you. And he goes, are you supposed to be in class? And I go, yeah, but I really need to talk to you. And he goes, I'm going to call the principal. And then he...
3 chances for people.
Yep. So he walked in to call the principal, and then I walked out. And then later, he got fired for fucking a student.
Did he?
Yeah. And I think I wrote him like some like fucking mean letter where I was like, serves you right, you piece of shit. I was awful. And so then I go to walk out, and I see my fucking band teacher. This is a tragic story, but I forgot. This kind of redeems it. I see my band teacher. My band teacher was my favorite. His name was Mr. Swabadesson. And
Mr. what?
Swabadesson.
Okay.
And he was so weird, and he had a fucking temper, and he was really funny, like really weird, dry sense of humor. One year for Halloween, because we were like kind of like fake enemies, you know what I mean? He would always take my Walkman and stuff like that. But I would skip lunch, and he would let me play drums in the band room during lunch. And one year he went as me for Halloween, like just like the punk teenager, like backwards hat, Walkman, like sunglasses, and like probably like some like Grateful Dead shirt or some shit. Just the best. He was the best. And my junior year, I really let him down because that was the only class I was doing good in. But I just stopped going to rehearsals. I was just like doing drugs, and so I actually avoided him. I hadn't talked to him. So even though he was the teacher I would consider, like, besides that English teacher, like a hero of mine or whatever, he wasn't one of the ones I was going to go to. But you pass the band room as you're exiting the school. So as I'm leaving, after these 3 teachers, like, bailed on me, I go to walk out, and Swab's there. And I go, hey, man, can I just go play the drums? And he just goes, yeah, just don't tell me where you're supposed to be. And I was just like, in that moment, I was just like, I'm so sorry. You're the one I let down so much. So I went and I played drums, and then I fucking left, and I did the dramatic, like, slow motion Saved by the Bell, like, finger salute to the school. And
you did? You gave turn around?
Oh, yeah.
Salute?
Oh, fuck yeah, I did. Yeah. Like the 80s movie. Like, yeah. And then I probably, like, lit a cigarette. Yeah. To be clear, I was the worst. I was like, this isn't a heroic dropout story. I was a piece of shit. And so
versus the heroic dropout stories.
Yeah, that's
that
true.
are out there.
Yeah, them like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, didn't he? Although wait, he may have hit women. I don't fucking know.
I'm not sure.
But so anyway, so I drop out. That English teacher, who gave me his copy of On the Road. So I start doing comedy, blah blah blah, just to like end this story. The fucking English teacher, when I did Conan, I went to find him like on Facebook because I wanted to be like, dude, like you're the reason this happened. Also fucked a student.
Really?
Had an affair with a student. Got divorced from his beautiful wife. Then fucking killed himself.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Damn.
And I was just like, what do I do with this?
How'd you find that out?
Just by looking him up. I found some fucking newspaper article. And then, like, I sent it to my family. I'm like, did you guys know this? And they're like, yeah, we didn't want to tell you. And I was like, what?
We didn't want to tell you.
Yeah. Well, 'cause I was like, I've been, like, unstable for quite a while. And so they would just hide things from me every once in a while. And so, yeah, super fucked up. And then when Robin died, there was part of me that was like, because Robin used to talk to me about my depression. Like, he would call me about my depression and shit.
You're talking about Robin Williams.
Oh, yeah. And like, oh, right. I told you off the air kind of. And when he killed himself, you know, there's always a selfish part of you when something like that happens, where my first thought is like the two people who believed in me killed himself. I'm like, where does that leave me? Like, I am fucked. Like, those are the people who believed in me. All right, cool. So he killed himself, dropped out. But then I had this really cool moment where after I did Conan, I went back to see my family in Jersey, and I was really sad about finding out about Mr. I mean, not just sad, but like shocked on so many levels, where I'm like, oh my God, like, was he this terrible person? I mean, just anytime suicide happens, you get that sick feeling in your stomach and I'm like, oh, and then of course I'm like, what if I emailed him sooner? Although I guess he still would have fucked the student. Because I was like, happened. Because at first, before I found out the backstory, that's what happened. Before I found out the backstory, I was like, what if I emailed him sooner? I would have told him that his life as a teacher was like worth it, and he inspired me to like go do comedy, and now I'm living my dreams. And I'm like, oh, he fucked a 17-year-old? All right, that's
you were not meant to send that email.
That is not on me.
That's not on you.
My email could have been evidence for who knows. And
think we got another one right here, man. It's probably been going on for decades.
What if he made her a mixtape? What if he made her the same mixtape? Then I'd be mad. Yeah. Then I'd be like kind of jealous. I'd be like, is Stevie Ray Vaughan on that? Fucking whore.
The same tape.
Yeah. So what if I started that whole pattern? He's like, I can just give mixtapes to students? All right. And then this fucking girl falls for him. Oh, Jesus. So anyway, so I drop out, start doing stand-up.
So can I ask you this? What is going on in your home life that is... You said your mom's relapsing. So what is home life like? And school's not an escape from that? Where would you rather be?
No, I would rather be at home.
You would?
School, I was just funny enough not to get like totally the shit kicked out of me. I get made fun of a lot. I was sort of like, the friend to girls I was in love with. I didn't have a girlfriend until I was like 18. I didn't have a first kiss. Like, my first girlfriend was my first kiss, was the first girl I slept with. And I just felt fucking dumb. I was just not good at it. And to go somewhere that you are not good at for 8 hours is a fucking nightmare. And I didn't have many friends. I didn't have many like good friends. Like I said, I could skate by. And so my home life is this really interesting thing where it's simultaneously the greatest thing in my life, and it was like really tragic.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and I think maybe it was because I had a lot of siblings, and like they're so fucking funny and they're so cool, and it, you know what it's like? It's like war buddies. People who fucking serve together. You're just like, that's what it is.
We've been through this together.
Yep. Yeah. And we would just like, mom would relapse and would deal with it, and then would like walk around the neighborhood and like tell each other Simpsons quotes until like we like didn't want to cry anymore, and then would go back and would deal with it. And that was actually how the reason I got into comedy. Whenever, I'm sure you get this question, but whenever I would do like interviews, And people would be like, were you the class clown? I'm like, are you out of your goddamn mind? The class clown was a fucking hack who would call me a faggot and beat me up 100%. And just make funny voices.
I was always funnier than the class
clown.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't need to prove
it. Exactly. I just sat in the back sadly after the class clown kicked the shit out of me and would like write jokes as like a defense mechanism. Where I'm like, that's why I got into comedy. And the interviewer's always like fucking horrified. But that's when I realized comedy mattered to me, when like my mom was getting carted away by like the ambulance or the cops, and my brothers and I were in this like fucking freeze framed panic, and it wouldn't be until someone made a joke, always inappropriate because of the situation, and the more inappropriate, the more it would give you that like guttural laugh, and then once you laughed, you're like, now we can figure shit out, now we can battle plan, and that's why. So at home,
are your parents still together at this point when you're in high school?
They were together for a lot of it. And my dad was trying to make it work, and he had like huge anger things, which we thought was him, but then he got divorced from the lady who kept relapsing and suddenly like was like so happy and nice and is like wonderful and supportive. And we're like, oh, I get it. That's what happened. And
took a while to see that.
Yeah. We were. Can you
play that one, Dad? Sorry, man.
And this poor fucking guy just having to deal
with kids,
having to deal with my mom, then like not wanting to, because he wouldn't want to badmouth her to us, because he's a good guy.
It is the running theme on all these episodes so far of the good parents have done. Even didn't matter how bad it got. The one thing that everybody said really made a difference so far is that the other parent. Now I'm sure they get in the car and shut the doors and be like, this motherfucker. Well, but not in front of the fucking kids.
Well, they would, but then what was worse is he didn't do that, but because we were I was a piece of shit, he would come home after dealing with my mom, dealing with this, and I was just like, fuck you, Dad, I'll listen to my music, and like, I'm like, oh, I'm such an asshole with what he was going through. So they got divorced. My mom fucking... I was in high school, blamed me for the divorce because the fight that put it, this is so insane. The fight that put it over the edge was me wanting to go to a party. And my mom said yes, probably because she was drunk. And my dad said no.
I'll be there.
Yeah. I'll see you there. I'll fucking outdrink you, pussy. And my dad said no because he's a responsible parent who I hated. And they got into this huge fight. And that was technically the last fight before they got the divorce. The problem is that was just a straw camel's back thing.
Yeah,
but my mom literally was like, if you didn't want to go to that party, and I was like, I swear to God. And
I was like, she hit you with that right on the spot?
On the spot in high school throughout the divorce. It was because I wanted to go through the party. And I was like, or could be the fact that you've like been arrested several times for like DUIs and like blah, blah, blah. But she literally blamed me. So she's been great recently. And
is she sober now?
I think. And
but your dad never was did he ever struggle?
My dad drank once in college, and went through up, and like now he'll like have a beer.
Yeah.
No, he's like so responsible. But my mom, I remember I went home to visit over like Thanksgiving or Christmas, and it was all the kids, and so we were telling like dark stories. We were talking about like me being a fuck up. We're finally making fun of like what happened to me. We're talking about like my mom boozing, blah blah blah. And we're all laughing because that's what we do with like our sad shit.
Yes,
that's why you have this show.
Yeah,
and I remember because we're all laughing, I was like, hey, since we're like telling fucked up stories, this is the last year, dude. So I'm like 35 years old. I was like, hey mom, remember when you tried to blame me for the divorce? And we all start laughing. And then my mom goes, well, if you didn't want to go to that party.
For real?
Still holding the fucking line, dude. Still is just determined. Because I was like, you know that like definitely fucked me up, right? Like that 100% is still a psychological issue with me. And so, yeah, so they got divorced. I hated my dad. Me and my brother like didn't talk to my dad. We like blamed him because my mom.
So you're living with your mom then?
Living with my mom.
All 5 kids? Anybody go with dad?
No, not really.
Did he stay close?
He stayed close in this, and he actually told me this the other day because I was struggling really bad with my depression for the first time last week, and the first time in a while. And he was telling me about that. Where to me, and I think probably to your listeners too, it's like your parents, even when they're in the shitter, even when they're struggling, they still have this very superhero like them or not quality where you're like, well, you're fine, you know what you're doing, you're my dad, you have to. And he reminded me, and I didn't think about this. He reminded me, he was like, after the divorce, my dad was the one with the good job. My mom wasn't. And he took we had like a decent house. And he went to a $700 a month little, like almost like studio, this like weird little house just because he wanted to be near us.
Oh, I know the feeling.
And dude,
literally,
this place is cute as hell.
Cute,
but I love it. I really like it. It's like the nicest couch too. So he told me that, and I was like, wow. Not only that, but like me and my brother Nick weren't even talking to him, and he still like, he wasn't like, all right, fuck you guys. He like paid my mom like child support way longer than he needed to, like all this stuff, like didn't really fight shit in court. Like I kind of did the same thing. He was just kind of like, blah, just take it. And
did you see him though?
Kind of,
but you guys didn't want to.
No, yeah, exactly. Like he would come over, my brother would just silently give him the finger, and my brother was like 16. They're like best buddies now, but like, I mean, must have been just, and he just poker faced it, like didn't show that he was probably.
I don't know if I could do
destroyed.
That. Yeah,
he should have beaten the shit out of us. We
I
were
don't know
such
if I could do that.
Fucking animals.
Did you ever try to give your dad a go? You ever get to that point,
dude? So.
I did it one time.
I did. I did.
Well, I'm going to be real clear when I tell you. One time.
Oh, okay.
One time I tried that shit.
See, here's the problem. Remember how I said my dad like drank once and he threw up and he never drank again? Mm-hmm. My dad's a dork. And so like we could all take my dad. And so the time I did it, oh my God, I was the worst. Okay, two things actually. One time he was raising his voice at me, and I was screaming at him, and he started screaming at me because he did have like a temper with like he would yell. That was like his big thing. And I like started getting into his face, and he literally like went to put his hand on my shoulder, and I like fucking dramatically threw myself back, like I threw myself into a vase, and the vase shattered, and I was like, you hit me, I'm leaving, like I'm gonna call the police. And he just looked at me like, I didn't do that. And I was just like, fuck. And I was just like lying in glass. So that was ridiculous.
Back's all bleeding.
And then yeah. And he just like no empathy, not like even trying to play that.
Man, I wish I could get that. That's Phil Jackson's Zen right there.
Well, yeah, it was insane. I think he was just like going so crazy that he just like didn't have words to describe how much we were torturing him as a human being. And so the time I stepped to him, we were at a wedding.
You gotta love young testosterone.
We were at a wedding. Well, so dude, it so ties into that. So remember I said I didn't have a girlfriend until I was later.
Yeah.
On vacation, when you're a teenager, when you're a loser, unpopular teenager, you either have to beeline it for the new girl on her fucking first day before someone lets her know who you are as a person. Or
hey, real quick, hey Janice, come here real quick before everybody talks to you.
Yeah, we have to leave the school premise, and I have to make you fall in love with me before you literally talk to anybody. Because like anytime there was a new girl, like my heart would just beat out of my chest because I'm like, this is my only chance. Or vacations. Vacations were the time when you could do it. You could be whoever the fuck you were. And so when we went away for this wedding, I met a girl, and I never met a girl before.
So whose wedding is this?
It was my uncle Chris's wedding.
Is that your dad's brother?
It's my mom's brother.
All right, mom's brother. Uncle Chris is getting married. Where are you going away from?
In
Jersey
Hawaii.
To where?
My mom's Hawaiian.
Wow.
So
okay.
yeah. So we went to Hawaii, and we stayed at this hotel, and there were these two sisters, and I was like, I'm gonna talk to both of you, like for the odds, and then like fucking figure it out. And we would take these dramatic walks, and this girl's name was Eden, and I had fucking like dreadlocks at the time because I was all into fish. Yeah, dude. Again, I was a fucking piece of shit. And she was like, I'll hook up with you, but I don't want to hook up with someone with dreads. And like,
she said that?
Oh, yeah. And by the way, my parents had spent the entire year, my parents and teachers were like, you got to get rid of those dreads. You got to get rid of those dreads. Yeah. And I was just like, I'm never going to get rid of these dreads. One girl said it. Dude, we spent 2 hours of her combing it out in the bathtub before we hooked up. I'm going to know this girl for 3 days. And I'm just like, whatever you want. And so she combs them out.
That sounds right.
And then she lets me finger her. And then my dad goes, we have to go to a wedding. And I go, no. Like, they flew me to Hawaii to go to a wedding. And I was just like, you don't understand. I'm in love. Like, I'm in love. Dude, I fall in love.
Look at a tub. That's all my hair.
I did that for her. For my, what's your name? Eden. For Eden. Or her sister. But she's the one that seemed to like me more. Yeah. I don't care.
Hoping her sister doesn't like dreads. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of pot committed.
That would be a fucking, that would hurt so bad. And so, by the way, if you take your dreads out, you're supposed to shave your head because it hurts.
That's what I was going to say.
So bad.
I thought you were going to say you got some clippers.
Nope.
Brushed them.
I was in so much pain. And so my dad was like, you have to go. And I was like, I'm not going. Spend my time with my girlfriend.
How old are you again at this point?
Probably like 17.
Yeah.
And then he goes, get in the car. And I didn't punch. It was like I just slapped him.
You slapped in front of the girl?
In front of the girl, in front of my family. And I remember his glasses it was the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. They just did that. They just like went crooked. Like that. And again, he was just stoically looking at me like, I can't believe my life.
How he just looked at me like, react?
Because I think he was just so sad. Like, this is the life I've chosen for myself. And I remember the second his glasses started to go crooked in my head, I was just like, no, shit. Like, I regretted it immediately. And he's just standing there with his dumb fucking glasses tilted. And I just like, I didn't say anything.
I smelled your finger.
I did. I get it.
By my nose.
Go be a man.
When he slapped my face.
Which sister was that? Yeah.
Was that Eden? Nice to meet you.
I just hugged him. I just
immediately.
It was just like slap, glasses, me feeling so bad. Every nice thing he's ever done to me, flashback, and I just hug him. And
did he hug back?
He didn't hug back, but he was just like, get in the car, and I was like, okay. Like, that was it. Oh, I haven't thought about that in so fucking long. You asked good questions, sir. Yeah. So that.
Oh, that's great. I tried to give my dad a run, and it was not a good situation. It was in his mom's house, in my grandmother's house.
Okay.
And she's sitting right there. He's standing next to her in a recliner. Christ. My two brothers are over here on the couch, and I'm running my mouth. And she's telling me to shut up, and he's telling me, come on. She's like, do not do this. Do not. And I went for it, man.
Whoa.
She's screaming. My two brothers are cheering. Like, they want to see me get my ass beat by dad.
This
and
is
he
like,
just, that old man strength. He wasn't even old. He was probably 40. He just picked me up and just like, God. Yep. And I was like, I was like, I couldn't breathe.
Point made.
We're good, Dad. We're good.
Man.
I cannot take you.
Yeah, it's that's like the Mr. Miyagi moment where you're like, train me.
Yep.
Yep, 100%. Well, the thing with, because I've been thinking about this a lot, where, like, I told one story about my dad. It's like the one piece of stand-up I stand by on like some of my old albums, where I told this like long story about, you know, when I realized my dad was like a good guy and like trying to sort of make up for it, and like it was this whole ordeal. Like, I tried to make up for it and I ended up getting like arrested. It's a thing, but like, but I don't want to do bits. But the premise of it is essentially like me for the longest time just being that artsy teenager that's like, fuck my dad doesn't get me, he doesn't let me, whatever. And like, I think a lot of people hit this point in like either their 20s or 30s where they realize that like the reason you hated your parents is because they were like decent people. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of the premise of it, where I'm like, oh, most of the shit that I despise my dad for was him looking out for me. I mean, when I think about how mad I got at them for not letting me drop out of high school.
Or go to that fucking party.
Or go to that fucking
ruin the whole
they would still be together.
Set your dad free. They
would be renewing their vows on the Big Island right now. Yeah, it was just crazy, because the reason I chose my mom
And that's where I was going to ask you next.
Yeah. Yes. Well, as I'm like telling the story, I'm like, this is probably a question.
Because you're allowed to do more. The eye isn't as strongly watched on you.
That's it. I couldn't do anything with my dad. And, there's part of me, the big thing when you live with an alcoholic or a drug addict is the biggest question is always, you're always blaming yourself. And so the biggest question I would always have was, whenever she would relapse, I'd be like, all right, well, last time I was trying to be really nice and supportive. I was like helping her. And maybe that was too nice and she took advantage of it. So now I'm going to be like a dick. And I'm going to be like, you don't fucking drink. Like, we're going to like whatever. Like, we're going to leave if you do. And then she relapses. And then you go, fuck, I was so mean to her. Like, that's why she relapsed. You know what I mean? Right. Especially when you're a kid. And these are 100% issues that I still have in relationships and I've still been working on. Is like, you don't have to be the hero. You don't have to try to fix everything. Like,
I had a lady say one time to me, last year.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, especially as a guy, I feel like I do it more often than maybe a lady. And I could be wrong, but so often someone says something and I'm just like, oh my, that was right fucking here. I'm too busy looking over here and above it and under it and around it. And I was like, God. And she just said to me, not everyone wants to be saved.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, my ex said that to me too.
Oh yeah. Some people just don't want to be. It's not like you can if they have to be willing. And I was like, oh yeah. So she was like, stop doing that shit.
By the way, to go even fucking deeper on that, it's like sometimes you think that you're being a good guy and you're actually just doing it for you. Like sometimes it's like, am I actually trying to save you or am I doing this for my ego? Or am I doing this because I was so fucking happy? And this is my biggest problem currently is I'm so fucking happy when someone wants to date me that I will ignore all of the fucking terrible reasons I should not date that person. And then when it doesn't work, assume it's my fault and be like, I will fix it and I will put it together. And I've gotten way better about it. Like this year, I think is the first year. Like if I don't think if I think they're going in a bad direction, like I will very maturely and gentlemanly like end it. But before, dude, I had a girlfriend once, my last like serious girlfriend who, on our first date, I'm like, so what's the thing you need to like work on in relationships? And I'll tell you the thing I suck at and then we'll know and we can, I don't know. I like thought it was a good idea.
You're like, hey, why don't you throw a grenade on the table and I'll follow it up.
And then we'll see who dies first.
I love that.
So she, but listen, here's what she actually says. She goes, I get really jealous, sometimes over nothing. Then occasionally I'll get, and then I get very mean and occasionally violent. And I was like, I'm in, like 100%. Let's fucking do it. Cause she was gorgeous. And anytime a gorgeous girl wants to fuck me or date me, I think it's a mistake. There's been some clerical error. I am standing where like a hot person should stand. And I'm like, yes, fuck, I don't care. Because in my head, I'm like, you're so much hotter than me. I'm going to give you zero reason to be jealous. This is great. And I remember my brother called that day. He was like, what does she look like, man? And I was like, oh, blonde hair, blue eyes, perfect body, covered in red flags. Like so fucking many reasons I shouldn't have done it. But it is that part of me where I'm like, I shouldn't be loved. The fact that someone is, and that's why I move too fast in relationships too. Because I'm like, well, now you're here. And surely by now you realize this is a mistake. So I have to like lock it down. So like we have to move in together because then by the time you realize it's a mistake, there's leases involved and furniture and obstacles and cats. And then you're not going to fucking go anywhere. And so it's this real, but it does come from that sort of like, I couldn't fix the mommy relationship. So like I have to make this work. And if not, it's my fault. And there have been relationships where it's been my fault.
I know that one too.
But there have also been ones where it wasn't, and I still would take the brunt of the blame. So yeah, so my mom. So one of the reasons that I still kind of blame myself is there was that phase when I was living at home that I didn't know what an alcoholic was. I just thought my dad was a fucking nerd. Like I didn't know that like when she was like, he won't let me have one glass of wine. It's like of her second bottle. Where I'm just like, oh, my dad's a fucking coward. You know what I mean? Like, my dad can't hang. And so, essentially, the sort of deal we had was I won't tell dad she's drinking. She won't tell dad I'm smoking pot. So, I thought it was great. So, again.
Did she catch you, or were you just honest with that?
Probably both. And there were days where she would come home, and I think probably on the days that she wanted to get sober, that she would suddenly yell at me, and I was like, "What the fuck, you're cool, mom," you know? And
did she work?
She had like part-time jobs. And here's the thing about my mom is she's a wonderful person. I said this when I remember saying this in high school so much. It was like a go-to line. Where I'm like, I wish he was a cunt. I wish he was fucking mean. I wish he fucking hit me. Because then it wouldn't have been so depressing.
Right.
I would have just been like, fuck off. Like, I just wouldn't have cared. But I, like, really love her. And she's really fun. Like, she's such a good storyteller. Like, I get that from her. She's really sweet when she's sober. It's just like, addiction is fucking addiction. And narcissism. Like, so many times, I think addicts try to figure out.
Well, that's narcissistic. Though.
Well,
say
that's what
you caused this divorce is ego
totally.
all over it.
Or like there were times where she would be sober, and even while she was sober, she was like, I could probably drink if I want to, or like, if your dad didn't, blah blah blah. And it's like, oh, you're not going to stay sober because that's not sober thinking. No. Like if you're still blaming other people, if you're still whatever, I'm like. I agree that substances are physically addictive and are hard to kick, but I think a lot of times people don't examine the why. Where like for me, I'm stopping drinking this week. I don't get drunk really. I don't get blackout drunk. I don't whatever. I just know I'm going to it for the wrong reason. So I'm trying to figure out like the why. And until I figure that out, like just going to put it on hold. Cause I do that with food. I do that with drugs. I do that with sex, with everything. So I'm like, I definitely have an addict. I think I'm too much of a control freak and I don't like being wasted. I don't like being not in control. I think the reason that I'm not dead, or just a delinquent like in rehab is just because I'm a control freak or just a lightweight pussy. Every time I get like semi drunk, I'm just like, I hate this. I hate it. And then I can stop, but I like being casually tipsy. It's hard for me to be around comics who are drinking, and not want to drink because I want to fit in. I feel like I don't belong. Tripoli asked if I was going to like the Brody memorials and stuff, and I was just like, I don't know if I'm part of the community. And he's like, what are you? He's like, yes, of course you are. And I was like, oh, like my friend Kelly Carlin had to tell me the other day. I'm like, I don't know if I'm a comic. She's like, you've been doing comedy for 17 years. Like, I booked you on your first TV. Like, you're a comic, and like, but it's just that imposter syndrome and blah blah blah. Anyway, I've gotten so sidetracked, but yeah. So I lived with my mom because she let me smoke weed, and then I let her drink, and it was this just like terrible trade off.
But during that time, you're failing out of high school.
Yeah,
right?
or I already dropped out.
Or already dropped out.
Yeah.
And then where's your next move from there?
So my next move is, I lived with my mom till I was probably like 20, 21. I was actually, the only time I dated a comic was I was like 21 or 22, and she was like 10 years older than me, and she would like come over and like sleep on my mom's couch. And one day I got home and my mom has like her head down in the kitchen, and my younger, shorter, scrawnier brother is standing there with his hands on his hips, and he goes, Jamie, we need to talk. And I go, what? Okay. And he's like, we have to talk about your living situation. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? And he was like, we're going to need you. Like, we're, as in me and
He's speaking for mom.
Yeah. He's like, we're going to need you to leave. And I was like,
leave?
Am I getting kicked out of the house by my younger brother?
And how old was he?
I mean, dude, he must have been like 16. Like,
That's a lot on his shoulders.
He was like a little sophomore with his fucking big glasses, just being like,
he ain't gonna smack these glasses off my face.
These glasses are staying on.
Glasses staying on, goddamn.
Yeah, my dad's just cowering in the bushes, like peeking over. Did he do it yet? Did he do it? And then he kicked me out, and I had to live.
And you went?
I had to. And I went to live with, and I remember screaming at my mom, being like,
I was
this
just
true?
You didn't fight, or you just walked out?
Is this true? Is this true?
Okay.
And she just had her head down, and
she nod or anything?
kind of. And then the older ex was like, well, you can't live with me. And I was like, cool. So I went to live with, I was working at a toy store, And
a local one, or
a local one, and I went to live with my boss. And so I lived with my boss at the toy store that I eventually got fired from.
What, you slept at the toy store?
No. I slept in. Oh, that would have been good though. No, I slept.
It's gonna be in this castle back here, guys.
Yeah. I like the Lego one more than the Playmobil one. No, I lived at their house.
Was this house a weird house? Like a guy that owns a toy store? Is it a weird place?
It was like a little Willy Wonka-ish, but it was dope. And they were also kind of hippies, so it was like very like wood panel fireplace, like, and she would sleep over, and it was good.
She'd still be coming over, huh?
She still came over,
right.
and then I would drive her. I would drive her like 2 hours to North Jersey because she worked at a Verizon, and I would go to drop her off, being like, I'm a pretty good boyfriend. And she would be like, turn your music down and drop me off at the corner so they don't see you. And I was like, all right, cool, bye. Bye.
2 hours.
Yeah. And then I would drive back to the owners of the toy store's house. And then I got fired from there for fucking stealing.
What'd you steal?
Just money to go to like fucking fish shows. Probably over time, just like a couple $100, but it's like these people were housing me. And
how'd he catch you?
Just counted the drawer one day, and like I was like, no, well, some days I was just in such a panic because I felt like such an asshole, where I'm like, that was the first moment I'm like, am I a bad person? Like before I was like, I'm a fuck up, but that was like, I'm like, they gave me everything and I just stole money. And I remember being like, no, well, you know how some days like the register was like over? That's because like I felt so bad. I would like put money back. And they were like, what? And I remember
put money back.
She told me, she goes, because this is when I was doing comedy, like I was doing open mics and stuff. And she was like, I hope you become a star. And I just started sobbing.
Oh.
And I've never seen her again. And I had this dream of like getting like incredibly famous and like buying them like a thing. Again, it was like a couple $100, but it's just horror. Like it haunts me.
You get a reason the toy store out of business.
yeah, exactly. No, they're doing fine. I fucking checked. They are
okay. They're
fine.
Good. All right.
Yeah. What if she also killed herself? All of my friends, anyone who supported me is dead. Yeah. So I was living there. Then eventually.
And are you keeping in touch with your mom and dad at this point?
Yeah. I mean, I don't actually. You know what? I don't remember. I mean, I must be because I'm still seeing my siblings and stuff like that. And then I finally moved to New York.
So is that what you're doing? You're working toward comedy at this point?
Yes.
Is that what's okay?
Yeah. So I'm still taking the train in, and my home club was the Stress Factory in New Jersey. So I would do like guest spots there. And like me and Julian McCullough, we were the kings of that Wednesday open mic. And then eventually I would do guest spots. One day, like a host didn't show up. So I got my first paid gig was like $15, emceeing for Jim David. But then the guest spots there were great. They're fucking hard because you literally have to follow a prank phone call on stage. So I would either crush or just death. But what was so cool is like they get A-list comics. So like it was the first time I met Norton and Attell and Lewis Black and like, all of these like amazing comics. And because I was doing guest spots and was like 22, I would then say like I opened for them,
Yeah.
And so I was doing that and I was going to New York, and then eventually I moved to New York, and my friend who was a comic had like an extra bed in her NYU dorm. So I just made friends with a security guard by teaching him some like Muay Thai shit because he was all into UFC. And then I just squatted there for
knew you probably beat his ass.
Yeah,
anyway.
and I just like squatted there for like a year.
Damn.
Started handing out flyers at the Boston. It was like,
so you lived on a college campus for a year.
Yeah.
And did not attend the college.
Didn't attend it.
I wonder how many people out there live on college campuses
I don't know.
that don't attend universities.
Didn't attend. And her roommates, to their credit, were just these all these just like gorgeous model fashion students. And I just didn't say a word, would wait till they left. Like it wasn't like nerds. I'm like, I'm going to fuck them all because I was just like a loser. And so I would just wait till they left, and then I would like take a shower, and then I would just wander around the city and go write jokes. Then around like 3:00, I would go hand out flyers with like, I was on like Pete Holmes' like original like flyer squad, and I would like stand on the corner, looking at the Comedy Cellar, wishing I was playing there instead of the Boston. I would hand out flyers for hours, throw half of them in the trash and walk around when I would get depressed, then do like a 5-minute spot to like a couple fucking like tourists who barely spoke English because everyone else left after like Chappelle came. And but it was still great. It was still, you know, at the time I loved it. You know, like you look back and you tell these stories where you're like, yeah, I'd like hand out flyers for like 5 years. Oh, we should have unionized. You know what I mean? Like that's illegal. But it was just fucking great, man. I would just like smoke cigarettes and watch Chappelle and like, you know, desperately try to ask like the Dave Attell's of the world for like advice or how do you get an agent? Just all the dumb fucking questions you ask like geniuses when you're starting out. And that was where Marin found me and he started taking me around the city. Like he would drive me around the city to his spots and I would just watch him. I remember watching him right after 9/11. He was one of the first comics I saw, period, and also one of the first comics I saw talking about 9/11. And it was so fucking cool because he's such a good writer, and it was so cool. I remember his first joke was, I hope I don't butcher it, but it was like he was like, right after 9/11, my agent called me, and he was like uncomfortably quick, and goes, hey, so you got to move to LA now? And then Mark's joke was, he was like, don't you guys always get earthquakes? And he was like, New York may be the target of terrorists, but LA is the target of God. And it was such this fucking, and it killed.
It did.
And it was such a brilliant way to do it because it was like, I'm going to do a 9/11 joke and it's not making fun of it. And it's essentially going to be a New York LA joke, but really fucking dark and real. And it was so cool to see that, like, that's what comedy could do. And I remember I did a guest spot for Attell that weekend, and Attell was so upset and was at the Stress Factory, and we didn't know if anyone was going to show up. And they let me do the whole weekend. Vinny let me do the whole weekend. And we didn't know if anyone was going to show up. And I remember Attell was really affected by 9/11. He was just like, they tell me to bring canned goods, so I bring canned goods. They tell me to bring dog food, I just bring dog food. He was just walking down there every day being like, ugh. And sold out. All the shows sold out.
Wow.
Because that's what everybody wanted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they were fucking great. Everybody killed. I'm not good and proud, and I can't imagine the jokes I was doing. Everyone killed. And it was really cool. And again, that's something I haven't thought about in so long, but it's great. And that ties into a lot of what I've been thinking about recently. You know, when I used to be in that very political social justice crowd that would attack comics, that was just something I forgot, where it's like, yeah, comics talk about horrible things because usually A, we've experienced it, and two, much like with my mom and stuff, like once you can break the ice and laugh about it, now you can have a conversation, right? And so I was doing that, and I opened for Mark a couple times. Stanhope brought me out a couple times. Like I kind of just fell in with like the Outcast scene. You know, like was obsessed with like, yeah, Norton, Attell, Patrice. I mean, those Comedy Cellar lineups then, the Comedy Cellar lineups then compared to the store lineups now, you know, where every night it was just, it was Chappelle, Attell, Patrice, fucking Norton, like Lewis Black. Like it was just crazy. And that was kind of like, you know, then it was just like the classic New York, like experiment with drugs, fuck a couple waitresses, like, but you're good at stand up, not be good at stand up. Like,
so I'd said you said divorce.
Yeah.
So how do you find your wife? Is it during this? When does that all happen? Like you're doing comedy, getting married in New York, and juggling all of that?
Okay, so this is a story I actually haven't told. This one will be tough. So it'll just be tough because for anyone who's like followed any of my life, it ends terribly. But it's a really sweet story in the beginning. You know, we were like 22 when we met.
How'd you meet?
So at that point I had to get a job because I couldn't live on the campus anymore. So I got a job at...
You graduated NYU.
Graduated NYU. Dropped out of high school. Graduated NYU. Still failed gym class at NYU. And they... So I worked at Borders, the Borders in Columbus Circle, like right on Central Park. And I worked at a Borders in New Jersey. Also got fired for stealing from there. This is before I moved. I forgot about that. I worked there for like 2 weeks and got fired.
Money there too, or
books. I stole books, and comics. And I remember I called the boss, or because I couldn't get. I was like, how am I going to get a real job anywhere? Like I dropped out of high school. Everyone's trying to get jobs in New York, like all the actors and stuff like that. But I was like, a bookstore's the only place I could feasibly work. And I went in there and they loved me on the interview. And they were like, all right, we'll just call your old store. The fact that you have experience, like we can probably get you in right away. And I called this woman and I was like, Julie, I don't know if you remember me, but like, blah, blah, blah. I was like, look, I'm a changed man. Like essentially I just gave her this whole speech. That I'm like, I've changed. This is all I have. I need this, please. And she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was like, just please God, do the right thing. And then she didn't tell me what she was going to do and hung up, and then I got hired. So either they didn't call or
she gave you a solid
respect. Again, she probably fucked an employee and has killed herself by now.
That seems to be a theme here.
And so I work at Borders, and it's funny. It's not funny. It's terrible. But I essentially got like me kind of tooed for just being a dick and cheating on my wife. But actually, this I also haven't said publicly. My wife and I met when she had a boyfriend and I had a girlfriend. We cheated on our first date together. She started working at the bookstore, and our first date.
You met at Borders.
Yeah. Okay. And our first date was a double date with her boyfriend and my girlfriend. And at the end of the night, both of our partners were like, wow, you guys really hit it off. And we were like, huh. And
had you been cheating at that point?
No.
That was the first date.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally.
And they both noticed that you guys connected.
Yeah. And she did. I don't think she cheated. I think she broke up with him. And I was living with my girlfriend. That's right. Oh my God. Poor Jen. I forgot about Jen. Yeah. So after the dorm thing, I had a girlfriend and we lived together. I think about her still because I'm like, those were simpler times. And yeah, so then I ended up with my wife. So we have this like incredible relationship. I feel like it's the first, like, she's just really book smart. And I have a chip on my shoulder from dropping out of high school. So, like, you know, I actually, like, read on the road for the first time. And, like, we, like, read the beats together and, like, Ginsberg. And we were, like, getting high and fucked up and all this stuff. And we ended up moving in with these two gay dudes who who also worked at the bookstore. And like you walk in and there was just like a giant fucking like dildo hanging above like the kitchen sink. And we like lived in like their closet. Like literally we lived in their closet.
How hilarious that you guys lived in the gay guy's closet.
I know. We were the shamed ones. They had to hide us.
That
like,
is hilarious.
If their parents are coming over, they're like, leave the dildo up, but can we shove the Charles Bukowski wannabe in the fucking closet? Yeah. He's insufferable with his poetry.
Oh, my God.
And so we just did that. So I was doing like unpaid spots. She realized she wanted to be a writer, and so she started writing.
How long were we together?
We were together for like 12 years.
Wow, that's longer than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah. No. And so so the part that's hard, because I feel like sometimes, and maybe this is just me, but sometimes like in relationships you fall in love with like the story. Like I love our story so much, and I loved our story so much that when I should have got out of the relationship, I think I held on to that, you know, where, you know, it got to a point where we were so miserable at the bookstore. We would hide under the desk. We would like, so we didn't have to deal with like customers. Again, we're in our 20s. We would like, it was romantic. We would like I wanted to be a writer. So we would like write short stories to each other, or like I would write like a sentence of something and hand it off to her and she'd write it. And, you know, it was very Jim and Pam before The Office. We would like pull pranks on the mean kids and like, you know, fucking tag their stuff with security tags and watch them get patted down when they just wanted to go on their lunch break. And like, it was great. It was exactly what a relationship at that point, you know, in your life should be.
And how old are you?
Like 22, 23.
That's when you got married?
No. Well, that's when we got together.
Gotcha.
And so then what happens, and this is kind of how I made it in stand-up too. What happens is we, God, I haven't told the story in so long. So she breaks down crying one day at the bookstore. And she's organizing those, those like little gift books you get like at the register at like Barnes & Noble. She's organizing those, and that's like her fucking breaking point, right? And I was like, what's the matter? And she was just like, I just can't do this anymore. And I just had this like romantic idiot moment where I'm like, come here. And I like took her behind the business section of the bookstore, ironically, and was like, we can leave. I was like, if we can figure out a way to get a car, we can get the fuck out of here. We can do what we said we've always wanted to. We can like be fucking Kerouac. I'll play gigs at like coffee houses or whatever. All we need is enough money to get to the next gig. And then that's what we do. And she was like, we can't. And I was like, you just cried while organizing tiny books. Like it doesn't get worse than this. Like we can do it. So we do it. We get a car. The first day we have the car.
Are you guys living together?
Well, we're living in the closet, in the gay kids closet.
Okay, so I just in the closet.
So we're gonna leave New York.
Okay. Now you got a car though.
Yep. Now we have a car. So we get a car. We go to say bye to my parents. My dad sees that I'm wearing my little brother's socks, starts screaming at me.
Now Dad loses. He
finally loses it. Everything. He's just having flashbacks.
You got your little brother's socks on, goddammit. I put up
dude,
slaps to
it
the
was
face.
the glasses, it was the vase, like all of it came surging into my brother's
just lost
and he from out of nowhere. And I mean, what it probably
he wears ankle socks.
It was probably that he was so scared that we were hitting the road. So I blamed him for this. So we leave. We were going to go to my brother's basketball game. We go, fuck this. We leave. We immediately get rear-ended by a drunk driver.
No, God.
Whole car smashed. Back of the car smashed. Because it's a Saturn, which is made out of like magic and like plastic. Like it's just done. It's fucking done.
They had those weird. It was either like white wine or like that turquoise they have with the automatic.
It was that. Yeah, it was that. It was that. That's what it was.
You guys saved enough money to get your car. You're like 2 fingers up. We're
Still
out
in
here.
New Jersey.
You get rear-ended by. How far away?
We're like around the corner from my dad's house.
Come on.
So here's what was even more fucked up. It was like a firefighter. It was like a drunk firefighter guy because he still had his fucking pants on, like the firefighter pants on. And across the street, there was a cop, and the cop was pulling over a woman. So, like, all these Jason Bourne fantasies I have about, like, what'll happen if I get mugged or whatever, I'm, like, not even thinking about that because I'm like, all right, there's a cop right there. So I'm like, hey, man, to the cop. And it was loud.
I mean,
it was at a red light.
Plowed?
Yeah. And he's like, hold on. And he's, like, leaning. He's, like, chatting up this chick.
No.
Swear to God. And meanwhile, I keep checking on, like, my girl. Just being like, are you okay? And she's, like, shaking, but she's fine. And I've never gotten into a car accident before. That's the first time I got hit. And the guy gets out of the car. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, man. He's fucked up. He's wasted." And I go to the cop. I go, "Hey, man, I think you got to get over here." And he's like, "Hold on." And then he gets shitty with me. And there's part of me, the conspiracy part of me, I'm like, does he know this motherfucker? Is it like cop, firefighter, homie? Because what happens is this guy goes to make the slowest getaway I've ever seen in my life into his truck. He just slowly starts backing up and like gets into his truck and like starts to drive away. And I'm like, hey man, he's like going away. And cops totally ignoring. And the guy slowly just goes into a 7-Eleven parking lot. Cop finally comes over. It's like, where'd he go? I'm like, fucking, I don't know, man. That way? Cop doesn't catch him or does and was like, get out of here. Stop drinking. And the cop's like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Does nothing. Literally does nothing. Nothing. So we drive the car back to my mom's house. At the time, my mom is dating this guy who's the worst. Like big crucifix necklace. His name,
what do you mean
name's
big?
Dale. Like big. Like it would be
wood or
it would be okay if he was a rapper. But his name was like that. You know what I mean? Like,
it spin.
yeah. But like just a white guy named Dale.
Cool chain down.
Like half a mullet. Like just the cliche guy that you don't want your mom having sex with. And I am ruthlessly mean to Dale every time I see him. However, on this night, I come home and I'm like, some fucking drunk firefighter like hit our car and the cop ignored it. I don't know what to do. And Dale fucking sees his opportunity where he's like, I'm going to win this guy over and I'm going to keep fucking your mom. Where he's like, hey, you want to go fucking find this guy? And I was like, let's fucking do it. And
pray
like,
on my cross real quick. Everybody, hands on my cross.
Dude, I jump into his car. I've never been in his car before. There's another cross hanging from the mirror. A truck. So he has a cross in the mirror, and he's like, all right, man, let's go. And so we go, and he's like, what? So, but then he would go back and forth because it was also the first time he got to like talk to the son. So he'd be like, man, we're going to fucking get this guy. And I'm like, yeah, man, we're going to do it. And then there'd be a pause, and he's like, you know, I really care about your mother. And I'm like, not now, Dale. Like, we're not doing this. We're just, there's one job. We have one job at hand. Has to get this guy. He's like, okay, right. And then it'd like stay in his lane. But like, I feel like he tried it a couple times. He's like, she's a special lady. And I'm like, no, not okay. We're not talking about you fucking my mom, Dale. So we get to this first firehouse, right? And I'm like, really,
now you're first one.
The first firehouse. Now I'm nervous. Because, like, isn't that a stereotype that firefighters are, like, alcoholics or whatever?
I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you this. You go into a bee's nest accusing one of their own of rear-ending you drunk.
Yes.
I don't know if I'd have the balls to do that.
So this is what I'm nervous about. So I go up, and, like, Dale fucking stays in the car. I just realized that.
Wear my cross. Just take my cross.
Yeah, I would rub it, kiss it for good luck. Is that how it works? Is that how religion works? Kiss the cross? And so he goes... So I go up and I knock, and this older guy answers, and I was like,
he just let you stay in the car.
Yeah,
he's staying in the car.
And
I'll just be here at my crosses. Man.
Maybe he was just like he was rehearsing.
He just wanted to drive you there.
Yeah. And so I go up and I go, hey, I'm so sorry if this comes off wrong. I'm not trying to be like an asshole or anything, but my car just got rear-ended. I know the guy was a firefighter. I don't know if he's here or whatnot, but like he had like the uniform on, and like again, I'm not trying to like be offensive or whatever, but is there someone that it could be here? And the guy was like, oh man, yep, yeah, he's been good for a while, and I was just like, wow,
for real,
yeah, and I go, is he here? And the guy was like, yeah, he looked so upset. He was like, damn, or whatever. And he goes, no, he's not here right now, but, you know, this is bound to happen. And I was just like, well, do you have, like, a picture of him? Or I'm like, I have to do something. Like, I can't afford to fix my car. He was like, yep, yeah, I'll go get it. He goes, gets a picture. It's not him. It's just some other drunk fucking firefighting asshole
plowing people
Dude,
out there.
It was just like some fucking like backwards hat with like an acoustic guitar in the woods, like one of those like definitely singing a Dave Matthews song, like. And I was like, no, man, dude, I swear to God, we go to two more, both of them. Like I'd get to the door, give the same spiel, and they'd be like, "Oh, Gavin, no, don't tell me." Fucking get a picture. Nope, not him. Like every fucking firehouse had like that fucking on the wagon, off the wagon guy
waiting for somebody to fuck
dude,
up.
And we don't find him. Literally. Oh, but now I'm like terrified of firefighters. That's pretty much like all that happened. So car gets smashed. So we spend our only savings fixing the car. Because it's literally Saturn's, or it was literally made of plastic. Yeah, so the whole back. So I think we only had like $3,000. That was it. All done. So at the time, one of the reasons that we started like touring is when I wasn't getting booked at stand-up clubs, I started to do like slam poetry because my shit was really political, and I saw Def Poetry Jam and with like Most Def, and I was like, oh, I just need to say my shit fast, and then I'll be funnier than all these guys. So cool. And so I show up at like these slam poetry places, and I started winning all of these like big slam poetry. Like I played at the Paramount Theater in front of like 3,000 people. Yeah, I got like fifth in the world my first year. Yeah, doing slam poetry because again, no one was funny. And I was like, oh, good. Like comedy.
So you were still mixing humor with your.
Yeah. Okay. And it was filthy too. Cause you could get away with it then kind of, but cause I was like, I'm too political for comedy. So maybe I'll be the funny guy in poetry. And then right away, these like two short-haired ladies from Def Poetry Jam. They got offended at one of my jokes, and they wrote a response poem to me.
That they were performers?
Yeah. And they performed. She wrote, I used to have this, my first like big laugh line joke was like, please take a mind, this is like fucking 12 years ago, I was talking about like gay marriage, and I was like, at least if two like gay guys get into a, like there's not even domestic violence or something, like at least if two gay guys get into a fight, like that's called a fair fight or something like that. And it was like an applause break line. And so
the 3,000 applaud.
Oh yeah, huge. And then she like wrote a poem like, to the stand-up comedian who thinks gay domestic violence is funny. And like, I didn't even know that was an issue because I was like a dumb kid. And I was like, fuck, man, even back then, because I was so depressed. I remember I started crying because I was like, I wanted to be a stand-up, and then I was failing at stand-up. So I became a slam poet, which is like literally like a step away from mime. I'm like, here I'll find a community. Like, surely there will be no infighting because we all have to support each other because we're doing something stupid. And
honey, dude, you right out of fucking slam poetry,
right away,
bro.
right away. I'm in trouble.
And you were 5th in the world.
I was 5th in the world.
That's not how you treat
and
number 5 in the world.
I was like, fuck. So I started doing so. Allie and I start driving around the Saturn, we get it fixed, and I'm doing like half comedy gigs, half like slam poetry nights at like coffee houses and stuff. And this is when MySpace was happening. I think Doug promoted me, or I opened for Doug a couple of times, and Stanhope. And there was no plan, though. It wasn't like we're going to drive our car to LA to get to the Comedy Store. It was like we just didn't want to work at that bookstore, so we're going to drive anywhere until we get discovered. That was the plan. So like there was one time where we went from like Ohio to Toronto to Ohio because there was 2 different slam poetry nights on a Tuesday and Thursday, and we had no money to stay anywhere on a Wednesday, so we drove to Canada. Like we just did that. And we did it for 2 years until we came to LA once. I remember Mark Maron gave us like the most depressing Los Angeles tour where he's like, that's where this guy OD'd. That's the store where this, yeah, it was just like, it was horrific. And like, that was the first time we got into a fight because Maron was so blunt, where like the only time Allie and I got into a fight, where like after spending like 2 hours with Mark Maron, Allie was like, what are we doing? I'm like, I don't fucking know. Like everything, all my dreams were just like popped. And we go to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we take mushrooms in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I'm supposed to have a gig in San Antonio the next day. But the next day, it snows in Texas. And Texas doesn't know what to do when it snows. So Texas closed. Like, just, there was no Texas. Like,
closed, y'all.
They didn't have salt. They didn't have anything. There was just, Texas was done. So we stayed in Albuquerque, and this guy was like, well, there's this arts festival. If you want, you can take my spot. And I was like, yes, okay. And so we stayed with this family. In Albuquerque, and
in the closet. Where they put
in the closet? Yeah. They moved us up to like, we stayed in like I feel like a kid's race car bed. I like that's flashing back to me. And so I go to the show, and the way the show worked, there was a show called the Reptilian Lounge, where it was a variety show. And you would pay your $10 cover, and then they would give you back that $10 in quarters. The reason they gave it back to you in quarters was, depending on how much you liked the act, you would then hurl quarters at the stage.
Jesus.
And then sexy burlesque ladies would come, and they would pick up the quarters, and then they would count your change, and then you would get paid. I made like $35, which for quarters, like,
that's a lot of quarters.
Crushed it.
That's a lot of quarters.
So Paul Provenza was there in Albuquerque for some fucking weird reason. I didn't know Paul. And I was just doing slam poetry at the time because I assumed comics hated me or whatever. And Paul's smoking in the corner, and he calls me over, and I'm like, is that the guy from Northern Exposure? Like, I just didn't know like who he was. It was before he made the Aristocrats, I think. And yeah, it must have been. And he goes, was that like some fucking poetry shit? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, you're a comic though, right? And I go, what do you mean? He was like, I could tell. You're like a comic. You're just doing something weird. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I was a comic. He's like, no, you're a comic. And I was like, oh, all right. And then he was like, what's your story? And I'm like, we're living out of our car. And he was like, all right, give me like a couple weeks. And I don't know what that means, but I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. And my ex and I, we didn't have any money or a place to stay, so we went to a meditation retreat, which is very popular now. But at the time, we just saw it was free vegetarian food and room and board and donations only. So we're like, all right, we're going to go there. So we went there. You weren't allowed to bring...
That's tight. I didn't know. That's good. That's done right there.
And so you weren't allowed to bring books or phones or anything inside, and they locked up our car. And by the second day, I was freaking out so much, waiting to see if Paul was going to write me, that I snuck out. I snuck out and I got my phone and I brought it back in, and Paul wrote, and he's like, I have a gig for you. It's $1,000, most money I've ever made. And I'm including like jobs. It's in China, so I get to go to China. And so I was like, I have to get the fuck out of here. And he was like, then I'm going to call. He called Robbie, who was working in Montreal at the time, and just started telling everybody about me. And so I was like, I got to sneak out of here. So I go to the meditation guy. I go, hey, I have to go. I'm like pretty sick. And he goes, people say that a lot, but are you really sick? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I'm throwing up and I got to go. And he was like, let me see the throw up. And I was like, that's weird. Like, no,
let
I'm
me
not
see
do
the
that.
throw up.
And he was like, why don't you wait one more day? And I'm like, what the fuck? Am I like I felt so culty. I'm like, I'm being like locked in. So I was like, I got to go rescue my ex. Or my wife. And so I run over to the girls' side of the camp, and I was just like, and I saw them.
Oh, they had you separate?
Yeah, because you're not allowed to talk. It's a silent retreat. And so I scare the shit out of the line of girls. And I go, hey, Allie, we got to get out of here. Think it should be like, let's do it. And she's like, I'm actually having a really good time. Can you just like pick me up after? And I'm like, cool. So sorry, ladies. And then I like ran to my car, like busted through, and I left, right? Call Paul. Paul sets it all up. And that was when... like after meeting Paul, it was kind of when we were like, okay, I'm like, I can now make a living as a comic essentially. And then we moved back to New York. And just between like, I was starting to get some road work, and like, Paul would take me overseas. So most of my career when I was really political, I would make most of my money in like Australia and the UK and doing like Edinburgh, like the Fringe Festival. And I would make a bunch of money, come over to New York dude, I played the Sydney Opera House with, it was me, Reggie Watts, and Christopher Hitchens on the main stage of the Sydney Opera House. And I couldn't get booked at like the New York Comedy Club, like the fucking, when I got back. Like that was my life.
Comedy.
Yeah. I remember my dad still will like, he would like accidentally be like a dick, where I like sent him, I got this like 5-star review in like the Scotsman or the Guardian or something. And I sent it to him being like, love me. And he wrote me back and he goes, I'm really proud of you. And then he was like, one day you'll get reviews like that in America. And I was like, I know you're trying to be nice, but Jesus, man, could you have just ended with I'm proud of you and hit send? And so that was kind of my career. So I made all my money overseas. That's how I started making a living as a comic. And then would continue to fail in America. And like, so I would only even play the clubs. Like stand-up New York, I would only play for auditions. Like I wasn't passed at any of the clubs. I was never passed at the Cellar or anything like that. I would just, if Montreal was doing an audition, I would get in there. And then I had this kind of crazy year that was like the year I was almost famous, where like my Montreal auditions went like this. I got booed off stage. My first Montreal audition. Yeah, Robbie said it was the worst audition he ever saw. Because I was still trying to do the slam poetry stuff. Gotcha. And it was about Hurricane Katrina and our racist response. And it was at the Comic Strip Live on like the Friday 8:00 show. And the only black guy was the host. And I remember everyone was booing. There was this one big dude in the front row who looked like a disgruntled oilman from like fucking Friday Night Lights. And he was like, I think it was Mike Britt. He was looking at Mike and he was like, get him off. And Mike just shook his head like, no. And so I was just like, we're a racist country. Like just awful. And booed off stage. I run out. Me and my ex, we run out together. And we really did have each other's back, like back in the day. Like that's why the story is kind of like hard to tell. But yeah, we ran out. So I got booed off stage the first year. Then the next year I got New Faces. Then the year after that, Robbie told me I was the first comic to get New Faces and then do a one-man show the next year. Okay. And the only reason I'm hyping myself up is because it's about to drastically go downhill. Anytime you guys, just so you know,
I can hear the clicks at the top of the roller coaster.
Yeah. Anytime I say something good about myself, it's like, and then I was discovered by Robin Williams. Like, we know where it ends. It ends terribly with me. And so, yeah, the year I got a one-man show, this is fucking wild. There were 3 comics at this one little theater that seated probably 100, 120 people. It was me, Patrice, and Bill Burr.
Damn.
Like, those were the 3 one-man shows. And my New Faces class was great. My New Faces class was like pretty much all of the Comedy Store people. It was like Eric and Eliza and Mo. It was great. And so the reason I'm like saying all of this is because just nothing happened. And I was sort of the guy, especially because I was political, that people were like, hey, I really like what you do. And I'd be like, thanks, man. You want to do something together? And they're like, oh, no, Jesus Christ, I'll get fired. Like, no. And I just got really depressed, and I started to feel like, well, this was it. Like, I did Conan, and apparently they got so much hate mail.
Really?
I did it. Yeah.
They told you that?
Yeah. Well, I did because I did a rant thing. I mean, if you watched it, I did well. But it was just, I was always like pissing off both sides somehow, where it was like it was like against like the war, but it was also like while Obama was technically the one still doing it, you know. Yeah. Like I feel like all the like easy paths I like never, like even now, like I'm never gonna do a fucking Trump joke. I never like, I just like, I don't know, like I was political like after 9/11 when like nobody could be, and then finally we got Obama, and I'm like, well, I still don't like killing civilians, so like I'm still gonna do that. And then even when I got my progressive audience, I feel like I started like trying to push them a little more, and I don't know. I mean, comedy's not fun when everyone agrees with you, you know?
No, it's no fun.
And I eventually did get stuck in like an echo chamber on like the progressive side after this. So after I feel like I exhausted everything. Like I did New Faces, I did the one-man show, and I'm like literally nothing. I mean, no acting auditions. I'm not really getting like there were a couple clubs that headlined me. I feel like I headlined like the Laughing Skull, but I was just in that weird point, like kind of where I'm in now, was like a little too big to feature for people, but not big enough to headline. And like, I didn't want to like go back, like living out of my car and like doing like bar gigs. And so we had this podcast. We started a very political podcast, and originally the podcast, this is me and my wife. So we got married. It wasn't. See, I mean, this was the problem with the relationship, is it just became a partnership and a best friend thing where we didn't have a wedding. I've never had a wedding. I've never had a honeymoon. We went to City Hall, and we did it because we're finally making a living, so let's like celebrate it. And we were told that we could get a tax break or something, and so we did. And we were at this podcast network, and the podcast network was like one of the first podcast networks. This was like even before WTF. Like we were like kind of like early on with the podcast, and so the network, we became like pretty popular right away, and they wanted us to take advertisements, but we were like, you know, like radical progressives where we're like, we're not going to take advertisements. And to be fair, they wanted us to like have like AT&T, and this is when we were like attacking AT&T for the domestic wiretapping. Yeah. It's like, what are you going to be like? Like, if you want to get spied on, be spied on by the best, like right. AT&T. Like, so we quit, and we were like, I guess we'll try to do the podcast independently. But that was our main source of income until fucking Fringe Festival, right, in the summer. And right around that time, I'm headlining at the Punchline in San Francisco. And I hear Robin Williams is in town, and I wrote Paul, and I'm like, this is a weird ask, but I'm like, do we know anyone who knows Robin? And I guess Rick Overton was out there at the time, and Rick's always liked me, and I think Rick he brought Robin. And I remember hearing his laugh, so like the Punchline's dark, you can't really see like towards the back.
I've been there a bunch.
And I could sniper point to where Robin was sitting, because it was booming. And I just put on like the show of my fucking life. I was just like, this is like literally just like for this dude. And I remember telling the story about my dad, and I remember doing this music rant about like the corporatization of music, and because Robin afterwards was like telling me all these stories about like Miles Davis. I'd see Miles Davis back in the day in like New York because I like name checked Hendrix and Miles Davis. And Robin comes backstage, and I'm just instantly comfortable. Like there are celebrities I'm not comfortable around. There are comics who haven't been doing it as long as me that I'm not comfortable around. I was instantly comfortable. I don't know if you ever met him, but I was instantly comfortable. Where he was like just as animated and just as frantic with his words and his hands, but he was quiet and he was like kind of looking down. So it was like a hushed version of that energy, you know. And right away gave me this big hug, like thanked me for like comping him. And
really?
No, I didn't comp him. Yeah.
But he thanked you for that.
I mean, the most humble.
Well, like that you didn't. Yeah, if they see him walking in, they're like, you can just come on in. Yeah, through the back.
And well, in the beginning, I was like, I went to Molly. I was like, oh, I have a name for the guest list. I was like, can you just write Robin? And she looked at me like, all right. Yeah, like I didn't know if he was gonna come. And then he literally was like, what do you need? And I was like, anything, like literally anything. And within a week, I was with CAA.
He did that.
Yep. I had his managers, this guy, Larry Bresner. Larry passed, but this guy, Jonathan Brandstein, still my manager. He was under Larry, and he manages like Norton and like those guys. And I managed Patrice like back in the day. And had that. I did this solo show at UCB in New York, and people online said that they were just like confused industry, like talking, being like, yeah, I don't know who this guy is, but like Robin called The Office. Like he just went fucking nuts.
That's awesome.
Someone sent me like a Time Out London interview where they were like, who are your favorite comics? And he's like, Joan Rivers and Jamie Kilstein. Like, and everyone's like, who? Like no one knew who I was, but he just made it his point. Word got back to him that we quit the podcast. And he called me one day and was like, how much did you guys make? And I was just like, you know, it's not going to sound like a lot, man, but it was like our rent. It was like $2,000 a month. And he was like, cool. And then like his accountant called me and was just like, hey, we're going to start sending you a check like every month. So like Robin, we didn't have sponsors for the podcast, paid for the podcast.
Are you fucking serious?
For a year.
That's fantastic.
Maybe longer. Yeah. And more importantly,
I love hearing that.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't want to do, like a bunch of places asked for interviews after he died, and I didn't want to do any, but then I did like an MSNBC one, and I think I wrote one piece. I forget for where, but just because I wanted people to know.
Yeah, those are great stories. You don't ever hear that.
No, and you know, I mean, what was cool was, like after he died, I was reading all these stories, some from famous people, some from nobodies like me, and everyone had a story like that about Robin. It was the same with Brody, right? Where you're like, wow, you two made everybody feel like so special and like that you were like the only ones in the world. And that was Robin. And so, yeah, so he did all of that. And like I said at the top of the show, and like more importantly, like he would call me every time I wanted to quit. He would call me when I was depressed, and like talk me down, like again, in like that little whisper. And that was big. And you know, he was the one who convinced me not to quit. And then he died, and then I fucking quit because I was just like, I got nothing. Like, it's when, you know, I mean, Joe's so good to me now, but it was when like Joe and I were fighting so at the time, like at this point, I was getting much more social justice warrior-y because our podcast was getting much more political. When the podcast first started, it was just my fans. So like, I could talk about gay rights, but also like say faggot without like suddenly having like a barrage of protesters like outside. Never obviously in a hateful way, but like it wasn't language policed, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But then like Allie started writing for The Nation, and then our audience started becoming like a little more political. And then it became about 50-50, but the comedy fans they were just there for the laughs, but the political people, anything that offended them, they would write. Now, look, I've had people be like back in the day, I had a gay rights joke and I had the word faggot ironically, and like a gay kid asked me really nicely. He was like, hey, I love the joke. I love the material. That word really affects me. Maybe you can like think about it. And I stopped doing the joke, right? Like that's fine, easy, cake.
That's a great way to approach somebody. Just maybe you can consider that.
Yeah. And him telling me his personal story.
Right.
Oh my God. And also, I realize I haven't said anything funny in a while. This is horrifying. So at first I was like, I did the like, because I was defensive in my head. Now I'm like, man, that kid handled it perfectly. But I was bummed out. And also, like, you're insecure as a comic. I'm like, that's one of my only applause break jokes.
Right,
You know what I mean? But I'm also like, if I'm if I'm pretending to defend gay people and a gay person's like, hey, by the way, when you say faggot, I think of when I got the shit kicked out of me. And I'm like, sorry, bud. Like, this is for the other gays. Like, then it's like, you're not doing what you say you're doing. So there was part of me. So I took it out for a little while. But then I remember I was doing this show at the Broadway Comedy Club, which is kind of a nightmare of a club. And I was bombing. It was like very touristy audience. And the joke was, again, guys, I promise I'm a good comic. I'm just telling you the bad jokes for the story. But it was like, it was about Texas, and it was about like Texas's motto being like, don't mess with Texas. And I was like, that's the only state where the motto is a threat. And I was like, if that's the one they went with, what did they pass up? Like, Texas, you better back the fuck up, faggot, blah, blah, blah. So on my set list, it would say Texas. That's what the joke was. And I'm bombing in this crowd, and I'm looking at this very like kind of bro-y looking crowd, and in my head I go, oh, I'll do the faggot joke. Not I'll do the Texas joke. I'll do the faggot joke because they're gonna laugh at that.
Right.
And that's when I was like, that's why you are doing it for that word, And so I do it, and of course the joke fucking kills, and I'm just like, oh, I'm garbage. And then I go to do that show, The Green Room, which is Paul's show. And I had this clip on there that went viral, and that was kind of one of the things that helped me blow up, where I was the new guy, and I was on the show with Ron White, Lewis Black, and Kathleen Madigan. Like, whoo, like 3 fucking powerhouses, right? And I was like the nobody. And Paul wanted to set me up to do this rant, and like I did in front of Ron, and it went fucking great, and like whatever. But Paul loved that Texas joke. And he was like, hey, I'm going to like do a thing where like I put like you and Ron against each other, and like you can tell the Texas joke. And I was like, I don't know, man. Like some kid came up to me and he's like, dude, it's a joke. It's comedy. And I'm like, all right. So I'm going to do the joke. But like a week before, I got a fan mail from this like kind of like rich San Francisco fan of mine, like beautiful, older, like blonde hair, has kids, married. And she goes, I just want you to know I shouldn't, but I've been letting my kids listen to your stand-up, and they taped one of your stand-up pieces for you, and they wanted me to send it to you. And my heart sank, because most of my pieces are like ranty and long-winded. Mm-hmm. I only have one joke that is like joke format, and that is this joke. And I open the video and I put headphones in so no one can hear, because I fucking know what's coming. And it is just like a bunch of like Hitler Youth motherfucker, like blonde hair, blue eye, 8-year-old in fucking unison. Like it is a chant I taught them, where they're like, you better back the fuck up, faggot. And I was like, yep, nope, never doing this joke again.
That's when you retired.
Yep. So I go to tell Paul, I'm like, dude, I'm not going to do the joke. There is a point on my episode in the Green Room where Paul's like, so Jamie has some thoughts on Texas. And I was like, it's a hell of a place. And he's like, got any other thoughts on Texas? And I was like, nope. I was like, Austin's cool. And like Ron must have jumped in to like save something. But yeah, that's when I was like, all right. So the reason I said that is just because like I'm not above changing jokes, right? But our audience was getting to the point where, I mean, I called a politician an idiot once, and we got an email saying that idiot is ableist. Like, it was just the worst of the left right now,
Gotcha.
Which I was part of. 100% I was part of. Where it's almost just this, like, hipster, like, you were offended by that? Well, I was offended by the live version, or, like, whatever, where it's like they have to just outdo each other. And usually, quite honestly, it's upper middle class white people who are saying this, and black people are like, oh, we got other shit to deal with. Like, we have real problems
real
that aren't on Twitter. But that was our audience. I mean, I said this on Rogan's show, but my sort of topping, like my breaking point was some kid wrote in and was like, hey man, I wrote you a while ago, and like my doctor said I was gonna die if I didn't lose weight, because I was like morbidly obese, and I guess I emailed him a bunch of like vegan recipes, and I found him a jiu-jitsu place in Baltimore.
That's where I'm from.
In Baltimore?
Yeah.
So that's where this kid was from. I still remember it. And I think it was Crazy 88 was the school. And he's like, just so you know, like I lost all this weight. My doctor said he's never seen something so impressive. I'm entering my first white belt tournament. And I'm like in tears reading this on the show because it's so fucking inspirational. We get like 10 emails the next day saying that by reading his email, we're fat shaming them.
Oh my God.
And they want
I wouldn't be able to deal with that.
And they want us to apologize. And that's when I was like, look, it's one thing, like the idiot thing, like that's fucking stupid, whatever. But like, this is like you're showing me that all the Republicans that I'm cursing out about are right. And that you're all these like sad, whiny victims where I'm like, you would rather that guy die than you take like a little bit of responsibility. Or just say, like, because at no point were we like, hey, fatties, do jujitsu or we're not going to fuck you. Like, it was literally, we were just like, this kid's story. We never even said, so you guys should lose weight. It was like, this kid did something fucking
it's inspiring,
heroic.
it's motivational.
Exactly. He was like, my kids aren't going to see me die. And that's when I was like, oh, are my side? Like, are we pieces of shit? But at that point, you know, Robin had died. Joe didn't like me. And I was just like, I don't have friends. Like, I had my New Faces run. I did my one late night spot. And I was like, I don't have friends in comedy. And this podcast is really paying my bills. And because I'm not confident from the high school dropout, and I'm in this scene with a bunch of academics who essentially say that I'm the problem just by being like a white dude, I'm very quick to being like, yeah, I'm probably the one who's wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like with the fat shaming, with everything, where I just kind of like stood back and just kind of went with it and kind of became one of those like PC warrior dudes. And then when it all came fucking crashing down, the only people who reached out to me were like Rogan, Stanhope, and like Provenza and comics and all those progressive people who talk about like being that. None of them. I disappeared for a year after like talking about suicide, being suicidal, like went silent. No more social media, nothing. Look, it would be one thing if I was like accused of like fucking rape or groping people, but like nothing like that, even remotely close to that happened. And yeah, comics reached out to me, and I had a girlfriend at the time. But yeah, it was just comics, and that was that reminder that it's just like, oh yeah, we're all like fuck ups, but it's funny that like comics aren't given second chances when all comics do are give other.
I agree. And not only comics, too, but in my life, I tend to see the people who've been most damaged and most hurt, they tend to reach out.
Yeah.
You know, not all of them, but it's like, wow, you want to, I don't know necessarily if you want to help or you just want to be there. You even know how to help all the time, but it's great. It's great to have that.
Yeah. I remember I did Bert Kreischer's podcast, and he was like, I know you're not going to believe me, but I kind of envy where you're at right now. And I was just like, don't, you're wrong. But he was like, getting to rebuild, getting to start again. There's something really exciting about that. And for me, when all this stuff was happening and, the divorce happened and, fucking feminist blogs were writing about me, I was like, nothing good can come out of this. Like, I'm all about the mentality of, it's like with jujitsu, like you get choked out. Great. Now I'm going to be more careful about like, I'm going to watch my neck a little more, and I'm learning from that, right? There's that whole self-help, like you're either winning or you're learning. And it's very, very true. But I was like, when you had a marriage fall apart, and you had consensual one night stands and stuff like that. And actually, most of those one-night stands, me and my ex-wife were trying an open relationship. Publicly, we even announced it, but they didn't write about that because that doesn't fit the narrative of, like, feminist guy likes to fuck. Oh, right. So I was like, there's no lesson I can learn. I mean, like, the lesson is I should have gotten out of my relationship. I should have been brave enough to like confident enough to like get out of it, but like I didn't. But But I was like, it's not like I'm a sex predator and I have to go learn how to not be a sex predator. I was like, what the fuck am I going to get out of this? But like years later, it's like, well, what I got out of it was like, I lost everything. And now I'm not going to take advantage of anything, whether that's friendships, whether that's, I think I said this on Bert's podcast, but this sums up who I was, where I would be like on Twitter yelling at people and someone would be like, hey, Jamie, your mom's on the phone. And I'd be like, tell her I can't talk. I'm tweeting about feminism. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's who I was, where like I was acting like such a good guy online, but I was like, I fucking cheated. I wasn't calling my mom. I like wasn't like really talking to my family at all. There was a period of 2 years where I stopped talking to my brothers and like to everybody in my family. And it's like I was selfish and I was really depressed, and instead of dealing with it and going to therapy or training harder or whatever, I just isolated myself, and I thought everything revolved around me. And that was something I did in relationships and friendships that I've definitely changed, and I've worked really hard, and I'm like a fucking great boyfriend and brother and stuff like that now. So even, so there is stuff you can learn from like rock bottoming, but I think a lot of it is just gratitude.
That's the goal though. A lot of people are so quick to shit on someone for something and ruin a career over something someone said a while ago, regardless of the field they're in.
Yeah.
And obviously there are some blatant ones that you can't overlook, but to me, the ultimate apology is to change the behavior. Like you have to let the person make the mistake in order to see it, understand it, and then change that behavior.
Totally.
And if you do change that behavior and you look back on it, you're like, yeah, I was wrong. That was really fucked up, and now I see it. Then I think that's the best thing you can. It's the only thing you can ask someone to do.
But it affects you, like because we carry our phones everywhere. If I was a teenager, I would. I mean, fuck, man, I'm 36. I've tried to kill myself 3 times. Like if I was a teenager with social media,
3 times,
I would be dead.
Why are you not telling me that?
Yeah. Oh well, I mean we can. Yeah, no, we can totally do it. So I tried to kill myself.
Wow.
Well, no.
How old were you the first time?
I guess let's just say twice, because I feel like the first time was like was like high school when like everyone's like almost slipped my wrist over a girl, but like I didn't actually do anything. I just like thought I was going to, and then I was just like, oh wait, I'm a coward. I'm not gonna.
That's nice about wrist.
Knives hurt. Yeah. No. So when I was cheating, when I was having this affair, so I had this like one affair before the open relationship, and I couldn't get out of it. And I was gonna jump off the bridge, like the Brooklyn Bridge, but there were all these like gated things, and I'm afraid of heights, and I was just like, no,
it's all bad.
Like, all bad. I'm like, also, I'm like the guy, like just like I fucked up dropping out of high school. I'm like, I would fuck up suicide. I would be like the fucking dude who just like breaks both of his legs and then spends the next 20 years like sadly trying to wheel myself into traffic and shit like that, while cars like swerved perfectly around me. Like, I would fuck
and you're
it up.
In a viral video, like this guy's lucky day.
Yeah. There are different remixes with like different songs,
so
like
close.
Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah. Every time a politician like says like a faux pas, it just like cuts to me swerving. Yeah, that was that. And then I kind of fucked up the second time was, I mean, the only reason I haven't gone into total details is because one, this podcast, I've talked for a very long time. But also, like, I've talked about it on Rogan's and Bert's, and I feel like most people know. But essentially, when I was super political, I was labeled as this, like, male feminist. I leaned into that. And then once this girl I had the affair with, found out we were in an open relationship, she just like went on some fucking message board and was like, who's been wronged by feminist Jamie Kilstein? And out of the like hundreds of girls I've slept with, one girl was like, he flirted with me on Twitter. And then another girl said that I called her a road fuck on my podcast. And then there's a Jezebel article about it. But the headline is like sexual misconduct. And it's like, that looks like I raped somebody or groped someone, or it'll say like abuse allegations. Not saying that like calling someone a road fuck isn't emotional abuse, and that I've never put my hands on someone. I don't fucking make first moves. I'm a comic. I hate rejection. Like, Jesus. And like, so that's it. That's like the Cliff Note, version of it. But I felt awful with the affair thing. And so I kind of was just like, I'm in too deep.
Are you in touch with your ex at all?
No, I had to write her today about like a money thing. No.
How long have you been separate or divorced?
Like 3 years we've been separated. And then the affair was like 6 years ago. And at the end of our relationship, we were public about it. We tried an open relationship to like save it. And it's awful, man, because like, I don't know. Like Bert was like, she really done you wrong. Because so what happened was, so these girls like made the article, like they were making complaints and they were writing to my wife being like, we're going to say something, blah, blah, blah. And I was in touch with my wife about it. And we were like trying to figure out like, fuck, this is crazy. What are we going to do? And then one day I was at jiu-jitsu and I went to my phone and I guess, I don't know if she got pressure. I don't know if she got pissed at me. I don't know if she was embarrassed. Like, but on her like verified Facebook was like, I'm now aware of the allegations against Jay, and like made it very like lawyerly. And that actually kind of gave the story, like that's what Bert was saying. That kind of made the story blow up because suddenly, you know, she never said I did anything to her. But that kind of, it blew up because of that. And at the time I was with that girlfriend, the really jealous one. And she was visiting her family in San Diego, or no, in Sacramento. And I was like, well, fuck, if she gets jealous, there's no way she's going to be with me when this shit breaks. So that's when I started like planning the suicide thing. Cause I'm like, I have nothing. But yeah, like that, I fucking wish I didn't do. And I wish that, like, I don't care that she wrote that Facebook post. She will never be my friend ever. She will never think that, even hear my defense. I mean, everybody in my old life pretty much wanted me ruined right away. They were just like, take it all. I don't care. But I wish she didn't have to go through it. And like, I think about her and I hope she's okay. Like, and that's not me trying to be like, I'm just a good guy. Like, no.
You genuinely mean it.
Well, I genuinely mean it. And also it's probably a little bit for me too. You know, it's probably so I don't, you know, cause I still, even the stuff that wasn't my fault. I mean, fuck dude, when there's a headline about you and the word sexual or like, I like the reason I've gotten into relationships that I shouldn't have, or like I've like fallen for one night stands is I think I'm just so desperate. I mean, I go on first dates and before a girl kisses me, I feel like I have to tell them like I'm like a registered like sex offender. Where like, I remember I made friends with a guy. He's divorced from this famous musician and I have a wedding ring tattoo and he has her name tattooed. And so we became friends. We're like, hey, we both made a terrible mistake. Let's hang out. And we went to hang out, and this was like my first sort of friendship, like since I like kind of reappeared. And I like sat him down on his couch and was like, there's something you need to know about me. And he was like, bro, I thought you were going to tell me you're a fucking rapist. Like I had a woman who spoke at the Women's March call me the day after it happened to be like, yo, that's fucked up what those girls did to you. And like, that makes my job harder to go after. Yeah, of course. Because it's like, that's the problem. What's happening is, you know, you can bitch all day about like guys who are falsely accused. There are still more women who don't get justice for their assault than there are guys who are falsely accused. With that said, when you either falsely accuse a guy or you conflate a bad relationship with emotional abuse or whatever, you're making it harder for women. I mean, you saw how like much backlash the Me Too movement got after the Aziz story, because that's when it started to creep into like, well, should his life be ruined for that? You know, that's when shit started to get weird. So, anyway, I don't remember the question. Whenever I talk about this, like, oh, so dates, like, I don't, even if it's
Do
a
you
fucking
date now?
Yeah. I mean, I date a lot. I've had a bunch of girlfriends since it's happened. All of them have known about it. And
Do you find it harder to date now?
Yes. So the reason that they were really not. I've ended the relationships. I've ended all the relationships, and I think they should have been casual dating. But because of everything I went through and my issues from before, the second it seems like a girl wants to be in a relationship, I have this fantasy of getting to be normal again and getting to just like have a family and have kids. Like, me and my ex-wife were never going to have kids because we were like the progressive fuck kids, whatever. And I'm like, I was convinced I'd be a terrible dad. And when I stopped doing comedy, I started teaching jiu-jitsu and I was teaching adults, but I also started teaching kids. And every parent was like, "You're great with kids." And I was like, "What the fuck?" Like, I didn't fucking know.
And you had a great dad.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, I had no idea. So I'm like, now I want a family and I want to fucking live. And like, dude, the idea of like road fucks is like, like I was never even a one night stand guy. Like I fell in love with my first one night stand. Like I'm a fucking dipshit romantic. I was just in a relationship that was a friendship and we didn't know that. And so, like I hated having the open relationship. The open relationship felt like I was still cheating. Like it was awful. And so anyway, so I got in these relationships recently, I think, because I just wanted it to fucking end. Like, dude, I go on Tinder dates and before the girl.
I've never done an online date
it's
or
awful.
anything.
It's awful. And before I kiss the girl, I literally feel like I have to tell them this. And I tell them.
You tell every girl this.
Yeah. Because it's like, isn't it weirder to like, if we like have sex and then they Google me?
Yeah.
And I've had girls be like, you don't need to tell them that. And I'm like, I don't fucking know, man. And so, yeah, it's horrible. I was on that celebrity dating site, which is it's such trash.
There's a celebrity dating site?
Dude, it's awful. It's called Raya. You have to be like invited or verified or whatever. And because all the girls are so hot, there's like no bios. You pick a song. And then it's just a
song.
Yeah.
And it matches you up with a girl?
No. So you like if you're a girl, you pick like a song. It's always some terrible club song. And then it's just a slideshow of pictures.
I see.
So there's no need for a bio because they're just like, we're hot. And it's just terrible club songs and hot girls. I went on 2 dates. Both of them thought I was I just wrote writer instead of comedian. Both of them must have thought I was more famous than I was because they both tried to pitch me scripts about their life story.
Very nice. Yeah.
It was a fucking nightmare, but my last name was on there. So on Tinder and stuff, your last name's not on there. But on this, my last name was. So I had girls. There was one girl who's really cool. We were like texting, like regular texting on the phone. We like exchanged numbers. And her last line to me was, "I'm really excited about our date tomorrow." And I bought us tickets to a show. And then the next day, I got a text that said, "I'm really uncomfortable and have to cancel." And I told my sister that, and I was like, do you think this is about like my Google? And she was like, no. I was like, but I didn't say anything in between. I'm really excited. I think I said like, me too. Maybe that was it. I shouldn't have said that. I did put a hashtag. And that was it. And I was like, oh, right. So like I got off that site and I was just like, Jesus, man, am I too much of a delinquent to be on like a trash dating site? And it's hard because I know it's a small percentage of people who know. I mean, the majority of your listeners probably didn't know. And that's why I think about, I'm like, do I even talk about it? Is there anything, like I'm going to do this new stand-up album. And there's part of me that I'm like, I have a lot to say about it, about shame, about extremism on both sides, but also I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. And also, I'll tell you off air, a lot of the stuff that was said about me wasn't even true. Even if it was true, it's still not a crime or anything more than what comics talk about on stage, like sleeping around, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of it wasn't even true. And I'm like, if I really wanted to like defend myself or go into it, I'm suddenly going to sound like a men's rights activist where like, I've had people, like I said, I've had amazing women in my life, women fans, women DM me being like, yo, what happened to you was fucked up. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. Everything's getting crazy. I've also had the fucking guys who write you and you're like, hey man, I'm so sorry what happened to you. And you're like, oh, thanks so much, man. They're like, we got to stop these whores. You're like, nope. You're not mine. You're not
on your team.
You're not with me, man. Yeah. And like, so it's just like, it's this weird thing where like creatively and for my well-being where it's just like, I survived suicide. My girlfriend saved me. Like comics saved me that I'm like, do I really want to, start that again? Do I really want to, there's part of me that I'm like, I just want to talk about like fucking easy, like dating and fucking drugs. I never just talked about shit like that. I'm writing jokes.
You should definitely talk about that.
Yeah. And it's great, but also like this shit's really interesting. And there's part of me that I'm like, but I'm like, I don't want to be the guy. Like, I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be on Twitter fucking attacking Me Too. I just want to be a comic, you know.
Well, I'm gonna say this: we're there, bro.
Yeah,
and I'm glad you're the guy that came on here.
Oh, good.
I really appreciate coming on and opening up. And
yeah, sorry I got weird at the end. That's just that whole fucking. I should have just kept
it's a safe space, brother. It's a safe space.
Good.
Will you please one more time promote whatever you'd like? Podcast, social media, all that.
Yeah.
Albums, books, dates,
man,
websites.
Just fucking.
Where is it all?
Book me on your stand-up shows. That's all I want. I just want to be a fucking comic again. That's the big thing. I'm on Twitter at Jamie Kilstein. There's a Facebook too. Instagram is the Jamie Kilstein podcast. Is Jamie Kilstein podcast. Free on iTunes and all those places. And that's it.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, man.
I am Ryan Sickler on all social media, ryansickler.com. We'll talk to you all next Wednesday.